Welcome to today's webinar sponsored by HUD's Office of Community Planning and Development. My name is Mark Allison and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. On behalf of CPD, I would like to thank all of you for joining us. Today's webinar is an introduction to CPD Maps. Before we begin, I'd like to make some logistical announcements. Today's webinar will last approximately 1 hour. The webinar is being recorded. The recording and the PowerPoint presentation will be posted next week on the Consolidated Plan website on the TA and training page. As an attendee of the webinar, your microphone will be automatically muted. Please listen to the presentation through your computer speakers if possible. This means that you'll need to turn on and up the speakers on your computer, and there are some directions on your slide right now. If you do experience difficulty with your computer speakers, you may listen by phone at the number posted in the meeting room. Due to the large number of attendees, there may be a slight delay in the advancement of the slides. If you experience any other technical difficulties, please let us know by using the question and answer box on your screen. You can also submit content-related questions using that same box, and we will try to address them during the presentation. And the way we'll do this is we'll be looking for themes and common questions, and the presenter will try to address those during the presentation itself, so we won't be responding directly to you through the chat box, but rather through the presentation. Immediately following the webinar, you'll be directed to a satisfaction survey. Participants are strongly encouraged to respond to the evaluation to inform the delivery of future webinars. Today's webinar will feature Meg Barclay, Project Manager of the CPD office. And now I'd like to pass this over to Meg to begin the presentation.
Good afternoon, and thanks a lot for joining us on today's webinar. Just as a correction, I am the project manager for the eCon planning suite, not all of CPD, but thanks for the promotion, Mark. So thanks again for joining us on today's webinar. The purpose of today's presentation is to introduce and demonstrate some of the features of CPD Maps, HUD's new online data mapping tool. CPD Maps is part of the eCon planning suite, which also includes an electronic template for preparing and submitting the Consolidated Plan. The Consolidated Plan was designed to be the result of grantee priority setting based on community participation and an integrated assessment of need, market conditions, and available resources. However, because of limited information about need and market conditions and a lack of useful tools, grantees' planning processes leading to submission of their consolidated plans have often focused on data gathering and budgeting rather than integrated planning. The eCon planning suite is designed to support grantees to create need-driven and place-based plans. By using the tools in the eCon planning suite, including CPD Maps, grantees will be able to focus on analyzing data rather than gathering it, and using this data and the planning template to set priorities, leverage resources, and develop effective strategies that improve neighborhoods. Just a quick run-through of the agenda for today's presentation. We'll go through some background and discussion of the eCon planning suite, describe the expanded planning data portion of the eCon planning suite, do an overview of the purpose and design of CPD Maps, and a demonstration of the Guide Me wizard, the map selection widget, the Identify tool, printing and saving maps, reports, and the map query tool. We'll provide you with a slide with some key resources and take your questions at the end. Again, we will also be taking questions through the chat box. So if you have any questions as we go, please don't hesitate to send them along. We'll be taking a look at those and fielding common questions as we go and also at the end of the webinar. So this slide describes the eCon planning suite. It includes 3 components, an expanded planning database that includes a wide array of data elements, a data mapping tool, CPD Maps, and an electronic submission template. The expanded planning data is actually available to grantees and the general public, and is designed to serve as a foundation for dialogue on community needs and markets, which will help facilitate greater public participation. And the database is very extensive and has data from many sources, and we'll describe that later on in this presentation. The CPD Maps mapping tool is designed to be user-friendly and make data easier to understand and to manage by both grantees and the public. It's designed also to support needs and place-based investment by presenting data at different geographic levels. And the electronic submission template, as you may have seen in last week's webinar, is designed to make the Consolidated Plan easier for grantees to prepare themselves, to create greater efficiency, and it's also incorporated into the grants management and reporting system, IDIS, the Integrated Disbursement and Investment System, Information System, to connect goals to outcomes and activities that are already recorded in IDIS. So first we're going to discuss the expanded planning database, including the standards that CPD considered when deciding data to include in the database and a general description of the database and the sources. And you'll see at the bottom of this slide and on the slides throughout the presentation that there are references to where more information can be found in the CPD Maps Desk Guide, which if you haven't already downloaded it or viewed it on the ConPlan website, it is available on the Consolidated Plan website, and we'll show you how to get to it here in a minute. So you'll see those little references down there. It's just designed to help you know where to look for more information about what we're discussing. So CPD's priority when deciding what data to include in the planning database was to ensure that the maps are current and accurate over the long term. So the data for CPD Maps was evaluated on several different criteria, including usefulness for the kinds of planning that are required through the Consolidated Plan, availability at the national level for all of grantees, and detailed availability at the census tract level. Also, it's important that the data is updated continuously from different sources and that it's available at little or no cost to HUD so that the tool can be maintained over time. This slide summarizes the sources of data in the expanded planning database that feeds both CPD Maps and the IDIS template. Much of the data here is available as Excel-based reports, as we'll demonstrate later, but it's also, a subset can be actually mapped using the map selection widget, which will also be demonstrated, and a different subset can be searched using the map query widget, which we'll also show you. So here you see this top row of the chart here actually shows you the CHAS data. This is the Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy data that's currently the main data source provided by HUD for the Consolidated Plan. And these are really powerful cross-tabulations that we request from Census that describe housing problems and needs of extremely low, and moderate income households. So you can actually get very detailed information on the actual needs of those different income levels. So how many, for instance, extremely low income households are cost-burdened and renters in a community. It's a lot of very detailed information that's not necessarily readily available from Census. But it also is very focused on affordable housing, and there are many other uses that Consolidated Plan funding can be used for and that need to be addressed in the Consolidated Plan. So we've expanded the data that we can provide to include these other sources. So we've got other variables from this American Community Survey from Census, some population demographics. We've got data from the longitudinal employer household dynamics, which is also a census product that describes changes in jobs and workforce over time. We purchased data from ESRI, from ESRI, about jobs and workers in key sectors that we hope will be more helpful for economic development planning. And we also have sources from HUD, like the picture of public housing that describes characteristics of public housing residents, continuum of care point and time counts, and project locations that are already recorded in IDIS, like CDBG, home, and then other HUD sources like HUD multifamily and PIH sources, knowing that grantees and other HUD, or ConPlan grantees and other HUD grantees are already giving a lot of data to HUD, so to the extent that we can provide that back without asking for it again as part of the Consolidated Plan process, that's what we're trying to do here with the mapping database. Now we'll move on to an overview of CPD Maps. and describe the purpose and design of the application, the 3 ways the data is displayed on the map, basic navigation, and an introduction to the widgets. So the purpose and design of CPD Maps, first and foremost, was that the tool be user-friendly to help display and analyze census tracts across neighborhoods, display and analyze data, across census tracts and neighborhoods in such a way that it's easy to use, that you don't need to be a GIS expert to use this tool. The tool is centrally maintained by HUD, and that's important because we can update and make all the updates to both the application and the data accessible to grantees and the public without special software. So we are going to need to send out, you don't have to upload anything new to your computer except make sure that you have a Flash player that is, I think it's version 10, but that's it. Whenever you open the CPD Maps application, you're getting the most recent version of the software and you're getting the most recent version of the data. And the data itself is organized to match Consolidated Plan requirements so that there's a way to make sure that the data that you're seeing can actually relate, if you're a grantee preparing the plan, to the data that you'll see in your Consolidated Plan template that we discussed last week in last week's webinar, and that the public can get that same data in the same format. It's designed to support place-based strategy making by helping to identify opportunities to target resources for greater impact. And because it's a public website, CPD Maps can also help communicate complex geographic data to citizens, partners, investors, and other stakeholders. It can help engage citizens and others into a meaningful strategic discussion that extends beyond a project-by-project focus. So here we can see the 3 different ways that data is displayed in CPD Maps. It's displayed either in points, and those indicate the specific location of a data element, and they're symbolized by that little puzzle piece with a little dot in it. So wherever you see that in the tool, you'll know that that layer will actually show you the specific location of the data that it represents. There's also outline layers that outline the boundaries of geographies on the map, and that's symbolized by the little puzzle piece and just the outline of the puzzle piece without anything inside of it. And examples of that are census tracts, difficult to develop areas, things like that. And then there are thematic layers, and those are symbolized by the little puzzle piece with different colors inside. And those shade census tracts according to the value of the data element in that tract. Examples being median contract rent, vacancy rates, percent renter occupied, etc. So just to get started with some basic advice on navigation, this toolbar that you see here on the screen now is what you see at the top of CPD Maps when you open it. So anytime you want to open any one of these widgets, you can do it by clicking on them in the toolbar. And the widgets that are available are the map selection, legend, print, identify, reports, guide me, grantee summary, and map query. And we'll show you a little bit more information on that in the next screen. So to get into the widgets in a little bit more detail before we demonstrate each one of them, the Guide Me wizard allows you to select a jurisdiction and create a custom map and create maps with a guided wizard. The Grantee Summary widget shows you the Grantee Summary box, which has some basic information about the grantee that you've chosen. The Map Selection widget allows you to add or remove data layers to the map and and that's also where you can change the display and range settings for data layers. And the Legend hides or displays the map legend. The Identify tool provides underlying data for when you click on the map. The print is sort of obvious. You can either print or export a map as a PDF. And reports and map query allow you to get a lot more information out of the tool, and we'll show you those too as well today. Now we're going to move on to the first part of our demonstration, and that's the Guide Me wizard and the Grantee Summary. So we'll show you how to enter CPD Maps and find your jurisdiction and build a map in the wizard, and also demonstrate the Grantee Summary. So now I'm going to go to share my screen. So you can get to CPD Maps from the Consolidated Plan website, or you can just Google CPD Maps. But if you go to the Consolidated Plan website, this is the main page, and you can get to it from the main page just by clicking Go to CPD Maps here. Or if you go to the eCon Planning Suite mapping page, you can open it from this page as well. And this is also wanted to show you where the desk guide is that has more information on how to use the tool. And this is the guide that I'm referencing throughout the PowerPoint this afternoon. I've had a question about, so making it really clear, you don't have to access CPD Maps from IDIS. You can throughout the template, but you can just get to CPD Maps from a regular web browser. You don't have to access it from inside of IDIS. So that being said, I'm going to click here on Go to CPD Maps. This is what you'll see when the tool first opens. You get a map of the U.S. and the Guide Me wizard here. So the Guide Me wizard is the way that you want to enter the map if you're looking for a specific jurisdiction. And it allows you to choose either by grantee type or as a non-entitlement unit of general local government. If you're one of those local governments that's not an entitlement, that doesn't receive funds directly from HUD, but you apply to the state, you can actually find yourself, you can find your jurisdiction that way. Just a note here, due to the peculiarities of GIS coding, if you are a county jurisdiction, you are going to want to just select your state and search for all of your grantees because of the way the counties are coded. You're just going to want to unselect the unit of general local government, and if you forget that, it's fine. But you'll be prompted to do that. And just select the state. It'll pull up all of the grantees, and then you can find your county that way. So since we're in Washington, D.C., I'm going to type in the city, Washington, D.C., and I'm going to find the state, District of Columbia. Actually, the city's just Washington. State, District of Columbia. I'm going to click Next. And it should show me all the different, since I left all of those things checked, it's going to show me all the different grantee types that are connected to the District of Columbia. I'm going to select CDBG, and anytime after this, I could actually click Finish, and it will immediately zoom to my jurisdiction and open the grantee summary box. But if I want to go further in the Guide Me wizard, I can actually go back. The Guide Me wizard will reopen and I can continue. So I'm going to do that. Click CDBG, click Next. So the Guide Me wizard is actually going to guide you to create a map and sort of filter your choices and building a map to the types of questions that you're trying to answer. And that way it takes some of we have so many layers that you can map. It's really designed to take a little bit to make it a little easier to decide what you want to look at least initially. So it will filter the choices available to you based on the buttons that you click here. Right now I'm going to leave it to housing stock and housing need. In the next, this allows you to set some of the settings for the way that data is going to be displayed on the map. So here you can actually see thematic data by census tract, and this is probably what you're most used to. But if you're a state and you have a lot of census tracts, you might want to see the data by county instead. Or you might want to see it by state just to see how your state ranks against other states. And this next one is a little bit complicated, but it's pretty important. So if you are, especially if you're a smaller jurisdiction, what the mapping tool will do is it classifies the data, especially, well, for thematic maps. It classifies the data according to the range of that data, the high and the low of that data at the national level by default. But if you're a smaller jurisdiction, that data range may be much narrower. And if you kept with those different breaks, the national breaks, you would not see as much variation on a map. So you can actually change how the software looks at the data and classifies the data into the different categories. So you can have it based on the national data, the range in the regional data, or the range of the grantee jurisdiction data. And whenever I'm going to look at a city, I always like to choose the grantee jurisdiction. So I'm going to do that. And that sets the default. So then when you open the map selection tool later, all the data will be broken that way if it's possible. There are some variables you're not able to do that for. And that's also explained here on this page. So now we get to selecting layers to actually display on the map. And it's going to take us through and allow us to select point layers, outline layers, and thematic layers in sequence. So here, since we chose housing, we're seeing a lot of housing investments that are point layers. And actually, as that happens, the legend will open up and we'll start to see those on the map. So I'm going to choose all the housing ones. Oops, I overclicked. So the next one being outline layers, I'm going to choose these low mod census tracts, and these are just the tract layer. We've had a lot of questions about the low moderate income census tracts that are displayed on CPD Maps, and these are really meant more as a reference point. They're not meant for you to use to establish area of benefit. You should still continue doing that the way that you do now, and we don't have any data at the block group level, and so you wouldn't be able to use this data the way that you're doing it now to establish area of benefit. So this is really just meant as a reference, as another way of seeing what's going on and differentiating some census tracts from others. And so the next thing we're going to do is pick a thematic layer. And so these thematic layers are chosen based on the types of those buttons we clicked back before again. So I'm going to trying the percent of rental housing built before 1949. In Washington, D.C., there's a lot of older housing, so we're going to take a look at that. And then I'm going to click Finish. And so now we see the jurisdiction, and I'm going to zoom in. This is another reminder to you. If you can't see this very well, you'll be able to see it at least a little bit better if you click full screen on your webinar window.
So when Meg?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, it's Mark. I'm sorry to interrupt. So some folks are experiencing a little bit of a lag on the slides. So if you could slow down just a little bit, I think that'll help.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, thanks for asking me that. So now we've gotten to the map, and the first thing that you'll see is the legend showing the data that you selected and some basic grant information about the jurisdiction that you selected. So here we see we'll have the Consolidated Plan grant amounts for the last program year. If you'd like to see a little bit more, if you click on the More button within the grantee summary, that will load some more data while we're waiting. It will load more data. Question about how this tool can interface with existing GIS. On the Consolidated Plan website, I don't know why this isn't showing up. On the Consolidated Plan website, there's a page for data. Let me show you. There's a page for data sources, and it has links to the HUD mapping services where some of this data is available, particularly the investment data, and more data will be made available over time. Okay, so that's the grantee summary. For some reason, that More box isn't loading. I'm going to close that for now. So now we'll go back to the next phase of our demonstration, and I'll go to the next slide. So in the next phase of the demonstration here, we're going to show you how the map selection tool can work to use preset maps, build a custom map, and adjust the settings for viewing data layers on the map. We'll also show you how the legend works, the identify tool, and also how to print and save maps. Okay. So I'll open I'm not sure why that stopwatch is still going, but we'll see if we can keep going here. So this is the map selection widget, and it's automatically open when you go into CPD Maps. It's minimized like that, and to open it back up, you just click on the little map layers there. If you want to close it back up so you can see the map, any of these widgets, you just minimize them with the little button. You can open them back up again. So we're going to clear this map. You can use this clear button, and that automatically clears all of the data you have displayed on the map at that time. So to show you, to see the other preset maps that are available, they are here in this little drop-down menu. So if I wanted to see a map, and this is just based on layers that we've chosen that we think would be helpful for instance, getting a start at looking at the rental market near transit. So this automatically turns on data for the change in median rent, so we can see where rents have been going up or down around the city. The low mod census tracts again, so who's kind of impacted by the changes in these rents. The location of transit lines, which we're seeing here, these red lines here, and it's a red line in the legend. The location of home activities, and HUD multifamily and low-income housing tax credit activities relative to, now you can look and see where those are relative to transit stops, and the stations themselves. Those are those little blue dots. So this just gives us a way of setting up one map that we might be interested in if we're trying to understand what's going on around transit stops. But say you wanted to look at a different data layer besides the change in median rent. Like instead of looking at the change in rent, now that I have a sense of what those areas are that are having raised rents, and it's a lot of areas around the city of Washington, D.C. But if I wanted to maybe not look at that, leave the rest of the layers on, I can just uncheck that layer. And maybe I want to look at median household income instead, and that's under the demographic and the general menu. And we see how that, you can kind of see just from this how the low mod census tracts roughly coincide with areas with lower median household income. Now use that layer to show you how to change the map settings. So you can change the map settings on any of these layers by clicking on this little globe with the gear on it. And that will take you to another page that gives you various different ways that you can change how the data is displayed. So if you want to see, if you don't want the data to be so opaque, you can actually change it with this slider bar, and it gets lighter. You can make it 100% opaque so you won't see any of the features behind the data on the map or somewhere in between. You can also change how the data is shown. Again, some of these layers have that option and others don't. But if I want to see this data by county instead and see how Washington, D.C. compares to the counties that surround it, I can do that, or obviously by state, but I'll go back to census tract. So, and then, again, here we can change the breaks. So we can change this to show the data by grantee jurisdiction instead of national, and see how that changes. Minute to draw. I had a couple of questions about the data itself. A question about whether the 2010 census data has been updated. Not yet, but it will be. And we are also working just on a calendar for updating this data, and when that has been worked out, we will actually post that to the data and the ConPlan or the CPD Maps website so that you'll know when to expect the data to be updated. And there's a question about whether there would be any block group level data. The census doesn't really advise using block group level data this way, and so we're not loading that in here yet. When the block group level data gets more accurate, we will we will look into actually providing that here also. On that note, there's also a question about a concern that ACS data has big errors at the tract level. Unfortunately, it's the only data that we have. The census isn't putting out the biennial census at the census, well, at all in the same level of detail or the same level of information. It's all in the ACS now, and so we're using the data that we have, unfortunately. And we do understand what those limitations are, but until census is willing to, until we're able to increase the sample size and get, I'm going to try and get this data to show up, and get that data more accurate, we have to use the data that we have. So this is what you do when the map services stop drawing, and this happens sometimes, but I'm just going to reload. Hopefully the application will cooperate. And I'm just going back through to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to finish and go back to where we were before. Maybe now we can. Oh yeah, so here we go. Now just going back again, I can show you the more data that's in the housing summary. So we have the last 5 years of grant data. We have the number and percent of households by the different income levels, fair market rents by unit size, and home rent limits by unit size. Now I'm just going to build that map that we had before. I'll start with the rental market near transit. Bear with me for a second. While we're waiting for that, I don't know why this data is not drawing. Okay, so I had a couple questions about the template and the map. Can we upload your own maps instead of using the tool? Yes, you can. If you can save those maps as a JPEG, you can upload them into the Consolidated Plan template. So here we go. So you saw the settings options. So now just to show you a couple of other ways to use the widgets, if you want to know more about specific data on the map, you can click on this Identify tool. Your cursor will turn into a little arrow. It should turn into a little arrow. I don't know why it's being so helpful right now. Question on the data in the mapping tool about whether or not we provide racial and ethnic concentrations. We do have data on racial and ethnic concentrations. There was a question about, so here we have the racial and ethnic groups that are included in the mapping tool. This is not good. I'm going to try going in one more time. See if we can get the Identify tool to work. I have a feeling this has something to do with sharing my screen. The question about which browser is best for operating CPD Maps, it was tested in Internet Explorer and Google Chrome and Firefox, I believe. I always use Internet Explorer. I know a lot of other folks who use Google Chrome and have pretty good experiences as well. Clearly, I am not having such an experience today. I have a feeling that it's being slowed down like this by sharing my screen through the webinar. So I apologize for the delays. So now I've got the Identify tool working. I can click on a point that's displayed on the map. Say, this transit station. I'm going to turn off the legend for now. And I can see that the name of the station, the street address, the city, the area, the status. This might mean more to you than, more to some people than others. I can also see more about the transit link itself, and that's the line. But if I wanted to know, say, when the tool is operating the way that it should, you can actually click on information and get information about the census tracts that you're looking at, about what is the specific information, for instance, knowing from the legend. This is in this category, since it's this color, since the census tract is in that category, you could click on that tract and in theory it will show you what the actual value is. So if you've got the, and I apologize, this is not working the way that it should, but it will. If you've got the map looking the way that you want it to and you want to print it, I'm going to see if I can't, just bear with me for a second. I'm going to open a new browser window and see if that helps.
Meg, we think a number of the attendees may be following along on the website in real time, which is kind of placing a burden on it. So,
oh, that's a possibility.
If folks are doing that, you might consider kind of logging out and just following the presentation, and then you can play and explore afterwards. So thanks.
Thanks for that advice, Mark. So again, I'm going to have to tell you about how this works, but when you're ready to print a map the way that you would like to hold on to it, you have two options. You can print it straight to your, here we go. You can print it straight to your printer, and this will just open a print window and allow you to print it to your local printer, or you can export it as a PDF. And that allows you to save the file anywhere on your computer, but just a reminder to add the .pdf extension here, this .pdf extension to the end of whatever you end up calling your map, because that will make it easier to open once you've saved it. And then you just click Save. Oh, here you can also change the title and the subtitle of the map as you go. And that will also show up on the saved or the printed map. Now we're going to go to the next part of the demonstration, which is the reports We'll go back to the PowerPoint. Go back to the PowerPoint, Carrie. Okay. So the reports feature allows you to generate reports in Excel about custom areas and also compare areas using reports. And again, the relevant desk map guides are there at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to go back to the map. And we'll minimize the map widget. So if you've got an area on the map that you're interested in knowing some more about, you can select this little reports widget. And the first thing you'll want to do is select that area. You can select by tract or by place or by county subdivision, by county, state, the whole country, or the different grantee types. So I'm going to choose this box. It's important to note that whatever shape you choose to use to select the area, the tool is going to pick up any of the tracts that touch that shape. So you see it doesn't just draw a square on the map, it's actually picking up all of those tracts that touched the square that I just drew. So I can name this area, I'll just call it target area. And that will be the area that shows, that will be the name that shows up in the report that's generated by the tool. And now you can actually also create, in your report, it'll provide you with data for an area that you want to compare your target area to, or, well, as we called it, our target area. You can compare it to the jurisdiction as a whole, which is only available if you've gone through the Guide Me wizard. You can also choose a county, a state, the country, or a custom area if you wanted to compare two neighborhoods, for example. I'm going to choose the jurisdiction. And then once you get familiar with the reports, you may find that you only want one section of a report. You only want the data for one specific table, so you can customize the output this way. You can uncheck all and check specific tables. You can check all. And this will allow you to put a title on your report. We'll call it report, and a subtitle. And also, this is important to note, if you don't have Excel on your computer, you can download an Excel reader from this website so that you can view the reports that are generated by the tool. So I'll click Finish. And you have to have pop-ups enabled for this, but now I'll click Open. And that allows me to open the Excel file, and now you can see how we have all of this data for our target area and for the reference area, which in this case is the city as a whole. Here we have some variables that aren't showing up. Wherever you see an NA, the system can't calculate the median of a median of 3 census tracts in this case, or 4 census tracts that we chose, and the average is the same. So that's why those NAs are there. But you can see how we've either got the data for the target and the reference area side by side, or in this case of this table, which is the different types of households by income category, we have them stacked. So this is the area that we chose as a reference, I mean as a target area, and this is the reference. And then it's divided into needs, as we saw those groupings of tables before. Into tabs, as we saw those groupings of tables before. It's important to note here, in order to see the special needs tabs, in order to see the homeless data, you would have had to have selected the continuum of care as your geographic area, because we only have that data by continuum of care. And for the HOPWA tables, you would actually need to have selected the HOPWA jurisdiction as your target area, as opposed to specific census tracts, again, because we only have that data for the entire HOPWA EMSA. The last two tabs in the report will show you the geographies for the census tracts that you chose to see in your report. So here we have the target geographies in our target area, and we have the reference geography here, which was the District of Columbia. And lastly, we see the map that we were looking at when we created the report. So you get an image of the map as well. Okay, so I'm going to close that. And the last thing that we're going to demonstrate today, going back to the PowerPoint presentation, is the map query tool. So the map query tool allows you to find areas with similar characteristics within your jurisdiction. So that can be important to understanding where certain problems exist and how you might, that if you're trying to design a program to address a certain kind of problem. So I'm going to go back to my map here. And select the map query widget. Let me just turn the legend off. Select the map query widget. So there's two ways you can have the query tool look for the areas that you're interested in. You can have it look within the entire country or national if you choose the national button, or you can have it look within the grantee jurisdiction. If you choose the national button, you can have it look for places, county subdivisions, counties, or states. It won't be able to look for tracts because there are just too many of them. If you choose grantee jurisdiction, you can get it to look for tracts. So that's what we're going to choose. And here we have the different categories of variables that look, you'll see, a lot like the categories that are in the map selection widget. So if I wanted to say look for, say I want to design a rehab program, housing rehab program for lead abatement, I might want to look for areas that have high percentages of households with kids under the age of 18 and areas where the with high percentage of rental units built before 1980. To select more than one variable, you need to click Control before you click the second one. I just hit the wrong button, and that's why we saw that message. So I'm just going to choose 2 variables here. You can choose up to 3. So first it's going to show you the full range of each variable within the jurisdiction. And so the percentage of renter units built before 1980 varies from 0 to 100% in census tracts, and the percentage of households with 1 or more people under the age of 18 varies between 0 and 61.99%, we see here. So as a result, right now, the total number of tracts that meet the criteria are 188, and that's how many tracts there are in the system, in the jurisdiction as a whole. So if I wanted to look for the percentage, areas with a lot of, high percentage of renter units built before 1980, and since the housing in DC is pretty old, I'm going to make that a pretty high. So I'm going to look for tracts that are more than 80% of housing was built before 1980. And now I see my results have gone down from 188 to 143 tracts that meet this new criteria. And tracts where more than, let's say, 40% of households have a person, 1 or more people under the age of 18. And now I'm down to 17 census tracts. So if I click Finish, the map is going to highlight those census tracts that I chose on the map, and it's going to give me, so we see sort of how they're distributed around. And if you want to see them a little better, I will actually just turn off some of the dots that are on the map, and that will make them easier to see. So you can see how our resulting census tracts are sort of clustered, especially down here in the southeast part of the city. But if I wanted to find out where the tract was that has, I can sort these variables by highest to lowest. So if I wanted to find the tract that has the highest percentage of renter units built before 1980, I could sort, click on that result, and I'll actually be able to see where that tract is located in the city. If I zoom out a little bit more, I can get a sense of where it is relative to the other tracts. So now maybe I want to see where this tract is in the results. I can click on that tract and it'll show me the actual resulting values for that particular tract for these two variables. And so you can see how you can click back and forth between your results and the map, and you can use this tool to get a better sense of how specific problems are affecting specific parts of the jurisdiction pretty easily. A question about whether the Identify shows you details on CDBG and home properties. Yes, it does. So I'm going to try it again. I clicked on the Identify tool. Now I'm trying to click on home property, and it's for some reason not showing me. But yes, it will show you the grantee that funded the project, the amount of funding that was allocated to the project, the number of, in a home project, it'll show you the number of units, I believe the number of units that are home assisted, and the date it was completed. And these are all completed properties. And it will show you information about, oops, wrong tool. It will show you information also about the CDBG activities. So if I turned on CDBG housing activities here, once they draw, I may be able to see some info about those as well. But yes, it does. And the desk guide should also give you some more information about what data is available behind the different point layers. I believe it does. So that takes us to the last slide in the presentation with the summary of key resources. So here, you should be able to click on these from your screen. We have the website for CPD Maps, and this is the website with the information like the desk guide that we showed you earlier. The direct link to the desk guide, the email address for CPD Maps, the email address for the Consolidated Plan. Either of those is where you can send emails to us with questions or suggestions. And information on future webinars and the recordings of past webinars will be posted on the ConPlan training and TA page, which is that first link, or the OneCPD Resource Exchange, which is the second link. And so the recording for last week's webinar on using the Consolidated Plan and IDIS should be posted to the OneCPD Resource Exchange site here, but you can also link to it from the training and TA page as well. So those two are good for, and this webinar will be recorded and also posted to the website probably this time next week. And upcoming webinars, we're planning to have a couple of webinars in June about with more information on the Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan templates. I think we have a couple of more minutes to take a couple more questions. There's a question here about whether this includes regional planning grants. If that question is about the Office of Sustainable Housing and Communities grants, they're actually, the locations of those grantees are on the map, and they're located, if you go to the map selection tool, you can find them under the wait, is it under boundaries? Yes, it should be. So the challenge grants are here, and I believe the regional planning grants are here. So you can actually see where those are located as well. The question about the low-income housing tax credit data and whether it's been updated recently. I don't know how recently that data has been updated. It is the database that's maintained by HUD, and I believe we get that data from Treasury. There should be some information. I think that may be also in the map services on the website, but if it's not there, it's at the HUD's Office of Policy Development and Research office should have that data, and the when it was last updated. There's a question here about whether it's possible to load historic data and see change over time as a comparison. That's an excellent question. We actually did a lot of, there's a lot of variables in here where you see percent point change in vacancy rates. These are all comparing the 2005-2009 ACS to the 2000 census. And so that gives you, so for instance here we do have the change in median rents. That's what we're showing on the map right now. So, so that does allow you to see change over time and get better sense of what's going on in a community and how the communities are changing. The question about whether you can upload a PDF or just a JPEG, if you make your own map for the Consolidated Plan template, it has to be a JPEG file. And there was a question about how to put maps into the IDIS template. If you would refer to the webinar from last week, there was a demonstration of how to do that. So, and as I said, that webinar should be online now, and you should be able to fast forward to the section of the slide that says about demonstrating the features of the template. And then just a couple of other questions about, following up on this webinar. The PowerPoint will be uploaded to the OneCPD website and the Training and TA. You can get to it from the Training and TA website for the Consolidated Plan. Whoops, wrong one. If you go, this is the, I went to that data sources page, the Training and TA page. You should be able to go to the OneCPD Resource Exchange from here. And this already has the recording for the first webinar that we did on the Con Plan back on May 7th. And it has the slides from last week's. And it will have the slides from this week's very soon. I'll upload that as well. And there was a question about where we can practice. This website is public, so you can practice on it whenever you want. You just need to go to egis.hud.gov/CPD Maps or navigate to it from the Consolidated Plan website. So I think that pretty much concludes the questions that we have for today. If you have any other questions that you don't feel were answered or addressed in this webinar, I would either direct you to the desk guide that's posted on the CPD Maps website, or I would direct you to send us an email to the Consolidated Plan, either to the CPD Maps website or the CPD Maps email or the Consolidated Plan mailbox email, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So that should conclude today's webinar. I think Mark is going to wrap us up.
Yeah, no, thanks, Meg, very much. I think you pretty much covered it. I just have to say that these new map tools are really, really impressive, and I can't wait to go practice myself. So thank you. I did want to thank everybody for taking the time to attend today's webinar. Also, as I mentioned at the beginning, you will be getting a survey, and if you would please fill that out, we can get your thoughts about how to improve future webinars. And then one quick reminder, I know Meg mentioned it, but this was a live demo of an active website, and it's a little challenging. I know there's a lot of information presented, so please do go to the ComPlan website and check out the TA and training page, and you can look at this presentation, at your leisure, slide by slide. Also, stay tuned for the other webinars coming up in June. And I think with that, so on behalf of the Office of Community Planning and Development, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.